So Hare Krishna. So we are going to start the it's the 32nd part of our Bhagavad Gita portion of the Bhakti Shastri course today, and just like last week, we're going to cover an entire chapter if we have any good luck. And we're covering chapter 16. The verses, there's 24 verses in the chapter. We're going to try to cover all of them. Like chapter 13, 14, and 15, and like chapter 17, in many ways, this particular chapter it covers the same topic from a different angle. It's almost the way I can imagine it is as if we have, if you were photographing something from different angles and zooming in and zooming out and going around this way and that way, but we're dealing with that notion of we're souls caught up in the material world and how to get out. So it means we're talking about how it holds us there, what things free us, what does it look like, all of these kinds of things are being answered. So in this chapter, we're also doing that. The focus here are on certain kind of root attitudes. It's connected very much with the chapter 14, the modes of material nature, as well. And we see the kind of the root mentality that causes us to be able to progress towards liberation, or the one that holds us and puts us in the opposite direction. So that's what we're going to deal with today here in chapter 16. So let's begin, because we're going to try to cover a lot of chapters. We're going to have to move swiftly, if we can. It starts out with 3 verses altogether, and it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy, and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with the divine nature. Okay, so that's how he's talking about the divine and the demonic nature. So here he's given a quick synopsis of, actually he's going to call this being in detail, what constitutes the divine nature. Now Prabhupada, as we'll see from the purport, he changes sometimes divine and transcendental, and we should take note of that. Here he says that these transcendental qualities, the word here is divya, and so that can mean divine. It can mean transcendental, and we'll see from his purport that he kind of switched. It really means, it doesn't mean that these are qualities that are already beyond the material nature, as much as it means that these are the qualities which lead us in that direction, in the way he's using it here. We'll see. We'll take a look at the purport, some quotes from his purport here, and we'll see that that's the case. And here Prabhupada introduces the chapter. He says, in the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it, we saw the air roots, were compared to the activities of the living entities. Some are auspicious and some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter also, the devas are godly men. The devas are godly, and the asuras, the ungodly or demons, were explained. This, I believe, is 9, 12, and 13, I think, are the 2 verses that do that. And then he says, now, according to the Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation. So progress on the path of liberation. And such activities are known as Daivi Prakriti. There's the Daivi, the divine. And he says transcendental by nature. So listen, he says they're progress on the path of liberation, and they're called transcendental by nature. So if you resolve the two, that's what it means. When he refers to this Daivi as transcendental, he means it's leading towards liberation. That's what he's meaning here. Otherwise, we think, well, how can I have these qualities if I'm not transcendental? How are these going to help me get out of material nature if I have to already be transcendental to have them? So it just means when he uses it that way, this is what he means. He's going to define his terms there. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. Okay, so again, you can see it there. Transcendence means already liberation. Right? So if using the conventional sense, so he's using transcendental in a very specific sense in this chapter, and it means this divine. It means something more, the goodness that's leading us towards liberation. So when you hear that, you take note of that. He's using it in a very specific way. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. So the Daivi qualities are in the mode of goodness that are leading us towards liberation. The asuric qualities that we're hearing later, the demoniac nature is in the modes of passion and ignorance. We should understand that because there's so many submixtures of these things, it means really heavily in the modes of passion and ignorance. And because you can be in these other modes and have enough goodness that you take up as we'll see, there are certain things you can do at your level that help you to move forward. And so you can be in the lower rungs of the varnashram system, be more in the modes of passion and ignorance, and still have enough goodness in order for you to take up the process and move forward. So the demoniac nature talking about here means there's not enough mode of goodness to do that. So it's not everybody in the mode of passion and not everybody in the mode of ignorance is going to fall under this demoniac nature category. But all of them fall under the modes of passion and ignorance. And it's like that. Okay? So all of the asuras fall under passion and ignorance, but not everybody under passion and ignorance are asuras. You can do your little Venn diagram. You can see that. Okay, so and then Prabhupada says, in the 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities, and the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. He already kind of has given us that hint. There's liberation or not, or actually degradation. Okay, so I looked in the commentary on the purport that Prabhupada writes to this verse is really, really, well, not word for word, but in some places almost word for word, really heavily based on Baladeva Vibhushan's commentary. And so Baladeva Vibhushan, and Prabhupada does this partially, but he says that the qualities in this verse are divided into sections. So some of them apply by Varna and Ashram. So the qualities are to a lesser degree or lesser or greater extent applicable to everybody. Right? And there may be some exceptions, but generally they all have some applicability. But the divisions indicate a particular emphasis on the qualities indicated for a particular group. So there are certain ones that are really a focus for, here we have sannyasis, grihastas, brahmacharis, vanaprasthas. What is it? Vaishyas and Shudras. Those are the categories he gives. So he breaks them up. So he says for sannyasis, it's fearlessness, and the attitude should be, I've just listed the qualities here on the presentation, and I've taken things from the purport that summarize what Prabhupada says about them. We have to move kind of quickly. This is a purport you can find a lot of wealth of information in. He says they should have the attitude that Krishna will protect them. So they're dependent upon Krishna. We all can have that to some degree, but to the sannyasis who are fully dependent, in the forest and such, not wandering unprotected, this is very crucial for them. Purification of one's existence, we're also everyone's trying to do that to some degree, but they also are really trying to do that. And Prabhupada focused on, he says, not looking towards women for sense gratification. For the sannyasis, they're trying to leave aside, especially all lust, and they've left their wives if they were married and this kind of stuff. So for them, it's really important, since the desire for the opposite sex is very, very deeply rooted. They're trying to uproot that very deep thing. So it says they have to be very careful. It says not even looking towards them for sense gratification, much less acting upon it. And then they should be cultivating spiritual knowledge, and he says in the purport that they also distribute it. They teach it. They do both things. And then for the grihastas, there's charity, self-control, and sacrifice. The Brahmanas also give in charity, but they just give the surplus. Things are given in charity to them, and they aren't supposed to keep things. And so they give that onwards. It's not one of their focuses. They do it, so it's also done by others. The sannyasis are giving donations of spiritual knowledge. So there's, so charities, but for the grihastas, because they're supposed to have means, then charity is important to them. And so Prabhupada says that it should be given to spread Krishna consciousness. That's his take. And it's a modern one. One that's practical for us. And then self-control, Dhamma. And the Prabhupada then says if he does not require children, he should not enjoy a sex life with his wife. So he just says that we shouldn't be, and this is more general thing too, just that the grihastas may have some facilities for sense gratification, as Prabhupada calls it, the satisfaction of the senses, sensory pleasures. And they shouldn't take it, they should try to keep them within the boundaries of the Vedic restrictions. Prabhupada says other places that grihasta gives you a license for some pleasure of the senses. That's why it's not all tapasya. But they're supposed to not go crazy. He makes the distinction between grihastas and grihamedis. And a grihamedi, somebody who's just trying to get as much enjoyment, sensory enjoyment out of it as possible. Where a grihasta is an ashram, where you're actually trying to progress in spiritual life. So you have more facilities, you have a comfortable place to live, you have decent food to eat, and you also have your wife and children and family and such things. And so there's some material happiness there, but we're supposed to keep it within certain boundaries. That's the self-control. And so it's important for them. Everyone's also trying to do that, everyone else, but for them it's kind of super important because they're in that position where they have the opportunity of the facilities. And sacrifice, that's also for them. It's generally, especially for the fire sacrifices, it takes wealth to perform them. The Brahmanas actually do the sacrifices, but they're sponsored by the grihastas for the benefit of the grihastas generally. Then he says, in the modern age, we chant Hare Krishna, so everybody also does that. But for them, some kind of sacrifice is important. The brahmacharis, svadhyaya, study of the Vedas, and the vanaprasthas are all about austerity. So one has, as they move from the grihastha life where they have some facility, now they have to really try to get free from that. And so the classic vanaprasthas in the varnashram system, they actually try to. It says in the summertime they surround themselves with fires, and in the wintertime they immerse themselves in the cold water up to their necks. So they really do stuff that's really unpleasant to themselves. So the austerity with body, mind, and words, Prabhupada says that they do. And then most of these, because these qualities are in the mode of goodness, and the Brahmanas are in the mode of goodness, we see that there's a number of them for the Brahmanas here. Most of them listed here. I think there's 26 total, and 12 of them are for the Brahmanas. And in Prabhupada comments that in the Brahmanas in all the various, these for all, in any ashram that the Brahmanas are in. The Brahmanas can be in brahmacharis, they can be grihastas, they can be vanaprasthas, they can be sannyasis. They're the only ones that usually take sannyas. The kshatriyas don't take sannyas. They have a different kind. We see after in the Mahabharata that afterwards, after Krishna leaves, the Pandavas just go to the Himalayas and walk until they die. So they don't really take sannyas. And so for the Brahmanas, there's simplicity, and Prabhupada says one should be very simple and straightforward. Non-violence, real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. He mentions that especially if an animal or anyone else too is killed untimely, they have a certain time according to their karma that they were supposed to be in that body. And so if you cut that short, then they have to take that body again and continue. So he says that's checking someone's progressive life. It's doing them a disservice. Otherwise they could live out their little lifetime peacefully and then take a higher form next time. So you're interfering in that for them. Truthfulness, he says, not distort the truth for some personal interest. And that also means, especially with the Brahmanas, they're interpreting scripture, the Shastra. They're giving you practical advice. I have this situation. They not only have to know the Shastra, but they know how to apply it. I've got this situation, and they say, you do this. And so you're supposed to, and so not distorting the truth for some personal interest. One of the things it means is that if somebody is powerful and rich, you don't tell them what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. The Brahmanas can't be bought. They tell the truth. And so that's the problem here in these days, right? The intellectual people, they can be bought. Mm-hmm. Where there, they would tell you what it really is. Freedom from anger, and Prabhupada says that anger pollutes the whole body in the purport. Renunciation, tranquility. He doesn't explain those further. Those are, I guess, pretty self-explanatory. And aversion to fault finding. And then he mentions this interestingly in the purport. He says, of course, to call a thief is not fault finding, but to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive. So not fault finding doesn't mean an objective, truthful, honest evaluation. Does not involve fault finding. Compassion for all living entities, a freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, which he says is ashamed to perform abominable actions. So you would be ashamed to do something wrong, and steady determination. Those are qualities applied to the Brahmanas. And the Kshatriyas, they have vigor or strength, whether that fighting, so they need to have that. And they have forgiveness, and Prabhupada says they excuse minor offenses. Mm-hmm. They're not harsh. They're not tyrannical. Mm-hmm. And they have fortitude, which is determination. They get wounded and they continue on with the fight. You see these when you see these descriptions of battles with the Kshatriyas. They get hit with arrows, multiple arrows, and that just makes them more fired up for the fight. So they have this fortitude. They have to be tough guys. And then for the Vaishyas, it's called cleanliness, and you'd think that was a Brahminical quality, but here it says they don't do. Prabhupada says no black market, so they don't do things to because they're in business or they're in agriculture. They can do banking, trade, agriculture, these kind of things, but they're not supposed to be doing really sinister things. Black market things, really cheating. And so he says that's for them. That's what cleanliness refers to. Mm-hmm. And then freedom from envy, and it says they don't take up weapons to attack others. This Baladeva Jabushan says from that. So the Kshatriyas do that. They take up weapons to defend their flocks from tigers and things, mm-hmm. but they're not against other people. That's for the Kshatriyas to do. They don't have the same kind of judgment that the Kshatriyas do. And the Shudras, they have freedom from the passion for honor. So it says they're kind of on the lower rung of the ladder, and they're serving others, and so they're not supposed to resent that, but to follow the higher classes and to follow the dharma that's given for them, and that's a quality that will help them to advance. And then Prabhupada sums it up. He says, and at the end of the purport, all these 26 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities, leading towards transcendence. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. So we're talking here about the gradual path that the Vedas give. That's why the Vedas are trying to, you hook up and do the Dharma for your particular station, and you're moving upwards. Usually upward to the next status. Next birth you'll be, if you're a Shudra, you'll be a Vaishya. The next birth you'll be a Kshatriya. And afterwards you'll be a Brahmana. That's usually how it goes. Mm-hmm. So it's a slow, but you're on the path. That's going to lead you toward the mother goodness and towards liberation. And then now he comes and he talks about the opposite here in text number 4. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. We're going to see quite a bit of repetition in these, so we should have a pretty good idea what the asuric qualities are. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Pritha. And there's a word in both the first two verses, abhijatasya, one who is born of. And we'll see that makes a difference here. We'll see in the purport here. Prabhupada says, in this verse, the royal road to hell is described. So I like that. The demoniac want to make a show of religion, and we'll see this in more detail later, and advancement in spiritual science, although they do not follow the principles. They are always arrogant or proud in possessing some type of education or so much wealth. They desire to be worshipped by others and demand respectability, although they do not. Command means they're not worthy of respect. He says command respect means worthy of respect. Over trifles they become very angry and speak harshly, not gently. They do not know what should be done and what should not be done. They do everything whimsically. Well, that's what was the verse that says that exactly. They do everything whimsically according to their own desire, and they do not recognize any authority. These demonic qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies in the wombs of their mothers, and as they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. So they're saying by birth, this is happening. We understand that, of course, that our birth is a result of our previous lives. And so by their previous activities, they take such a birth. Now, it doesn't mean that once we're born, we can't change those qualities. We may have a birth where we have high-level qualities. We can go astray, and next life we can take the next birth in the opposite side of the equation. In the same way, these people, if by some mercy they can change their ways, they can have it. It's harder for them, but there's a chance, especially if they meet devotees. But it means that these qualities tend to reinforce each other, and we'll see that. That you're born with a certain nature, and if it's a negative one and you act on it, you reinforce it and it becomes even worse, and you take another birth like that. If it's good, then you take a little better birth, and you keep acting on it, it becomes reinforced. So it can be a vicious upward or a vicious downward spiral as you pick up momentum. Pick up where you left off and reinforce that same thing and take another birth like that. So you go further up or further down. We heard about that, how more the goodness brings you up in the universe, and more the ignorance particularly takes you down. And then in 5, and this is here Krishna says, the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demonic qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. And here the comment, Prabhupada and also the other commentators say that Lord Krishna encouraged Arjuna by telling him that he was not born with demonic qualities. He was afraid that he was doing something wrong. Krishna and Prabhupada says his involvement in the fight was not demonic because he was considering the pros and cons. See, someone who's demonic, they just go for it. They don't think, should I do it, should I not? Duryodhana thinks, I want the throne, I'll do anything I can to get it. Right. It's not even a question for you don't think it over. He was considering whether respectable persons such as Bhishma and Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. Therefore, he was not of the quality of the demons. And for a kshatriya, a military man, shooting arrows at the enemy is considered transcendental. Again, leading towards liberation. He's using that transcendental in this specific way in this chapter. And refraining from such a duty is demoniac. Therefore, there was no cause for Arjuna to lament. So actually, it was even the opposite. Then Arjuna feared. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendently situated. Again, we're on the path towards transcendence. Not that you're performing the regulative principles and now you've already liberated. So Prabhupada, in this chapter, uses that terminology in a specific way that he revealed in the purport. So moving on, now he says, O son of Pritha, this is 6, in this world there are 2 kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other demoniac. I have already explained to you at length the divine qualities in texts 1 through 3. Now hear from me of the demoniac. And he gave us a taste of that already, but now he's going to go into it in more detail. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, one should perform duties in the light of authoritative scripture. This mentality is called divine. One who does not follow the regulative principles as they are laid down in the scriptures and who acts according to whims is called demoniac or asuric. So this is kind of a litmus test that you can divide the two. Because even persons like the Shudras who are more in the mode of ignorance, if they're following the rules of scripture, they're actually adhering to this, to their daiva, the daivi principles, and they're moving upwards. And whereas those, even if they were born with higher qualities, if they start to avoid the scriptures, they're going to go down. So this is kind of a real litmus test. So somebody can be born a Brahmana, in the Brahmana family. Mm-hmm. And if suddenly they start disregarding the scriptures, now suddenly they're on the other side. And their next birth isn't going to be very good. So that's a litmus test for this, is whether they're following the scriptures or not. And Krishna reinforces this at the end of the chapter and mentions it throughout. So it's not accidental that Prabhupada called attention to that. And in 16, those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. This pravritim and nivritim. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. Both Baladev Vidyabhushan and Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur translate pravritim and nivritim. Pravritim that they translate as dharma, and nivritim as adharma. Those are kind of purportful translations, though Prabhupada's translation is more literal and covers it quite well. So he says that they don't understand what they should do according to Dharma, and they don't understand what they shouldn't do according to Dharma. So there's both things, right? There's things that you're supposed to do and things you're not supposed to do in Dharma. So they don't know either one of those things. And so when he says they don't know what is to be done, that means according to Dharma, and what is not to be done according to the Dharma. And so Prabhupada's translation is gives a nice understanding of how it relates to Dharma. So it's kind of, but Prabhupada is more a literal translation here and conveys the meaning very nicely as well. But that's what it's talking about, actions and not actions. And Prabhupada says, therefore it is stated here that the demons do not know the scriptural rules, nor do they have any inclination to follow them. Most of them do not know them, and even if some of them know, they have not the tendency to follow them. They have no faith, nor are they willing to act in terms of the Vedic injunctions. The demons therefore do not accept any instruction which is good for society, and because they do not follow the experience of great sages and the rules and regulations laid down by the sages, the social condition of the demonic people is very miserable. And of course, there'll be a whole verse about this later on. So probably sometimes he anticipates and what's going to come later a little bit, because he knows the chapter very well. And then in 8, they say that this world is unreal, with no foundation, asatyam apratishtam, no God in control, anishvaram, without a controller. They say that it is produced of sex desire, that's a kama haitakam, caused by desire, and has no cause other than lust. Aparaspara, no cause. And Baladev Vidyabhushan, he kind of really helps here, in my view, to understand this. I could understand the basics of this one, but I was kind of confused how they all fit together, the different qualities. And he says, and Prabhupada, I have quotes from Prabhupada that support each one of these things. I see Prabhupada was really following him quite well in this. So he says there's three. He says that what's described in this verse refer to 3 different kinds of asuric philosophies. The first one's the Mayavadi philosophy, that says the world is just an illusion that disappears when we understand that there is only oneness. This is Shankaracharya's philosophy that it's not real. Was it Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, they say. So it's unreal. Asatya means unreal or untrue. And there is no controller or cause and no foundation. It's just an illusion. And Prabhupada says, I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit, where Prabhupada says, they take it for granted that all manifestation of diversity is a display of ignorance, just as in a dream we may create so many things which actually have no existence. Then when we are awake, we shall see that everything is simply a dream. So that's where that part of it comes from. And then Baladev says that the other part comes from a Buddhist philosophy that says that creation occurs naturally without a cause or creator. It just happens by the materials are there, and it happens like just like we have in our modern scientific view. And Prabhupada kind of reflects that here. He says, they say that this cosmic manifestation arises due to chance, material actions, and reactions. So that's what they say. There's no God who creates it and organizes it. It just happens by a natural combination of the ingredients. And then there's Charvaka Muni's philosophy that the world has no other purpose than to be used to fulfill our material desires. And so the word here, kama hoitakam, caused by desire. The hetu, cause, can also mean, has a connotation of motivation. Like when we say that bhakti is a hoitaki, a pratiyaham. It's unmotivated and continuous. So the ahaitukam means with it means literally without a cause, but Prabhupada translates it like without a motivation. So in that sense, Baladeva Vibhushan says that they're seeing it that it's the purpose of the world, and this will be confirmed later on when we hear more about the demoniac natures, that they think that's what the world is for. There's no other purpose for it than to enjoy the pleasures that you can, of the sensations, the pleasures, material pleasures that you can get. So that's what that means, caused by sex. That's what its purpose is to enjoy. And Prabhupada says, here he says, on this one he says, but factually, although the demons say that life is a dream, they are very expert in enjoying this dream. And so instead of acquiring knowledge, they become more and more implicated in their dreamland. So there's three kind of flavors that are all mixed together in that verse. Depending, and so it's either just an illusion, it's something that's just kind of a self-caused. So there's there's no rules and regulations, there's no controller, and similarly that just is, we're just here to enjoy. There's no other purpose to it. Some of them may fit together, some of them may not. They may have some of these.
It's more on illusion, right?
Yeah. Well, I say more people have the third one, and the second and third than illusion. Most people think it's real, but it's caused by, if you go by in the modern world, if you go by, especially in the modern world, you have more people think that it's real. Most people don't think it's illusion. They think it's real, but it was caused just by itself somehow.
Right.
There's a big bang that happened, and now it's there. And what we want to do is what we want to do. There can't be any other purpose to it, right? If there's no one behind it, there's no creator. Then what is the purpose? It's to do what you want to do. So those second two, I think, are more prominent today. There's some and even the other one's more for the illusions, more for the strict Mayavadis. So that's of course there's still those who exist, but then the rank and file people in the world, the second and third one are probably more common. I would say, and then they go together also, even though they can be two different. As two philosophies, they're very compatible. And then in 9, following such conclusions, the demonic who are lost to themselves, this is nashta atmanaha, lost themselves, and who have no intelligence, alpa buddhayaha, very small intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works as ugra karmanaha, meant to destroy the world, shayaya jagataha. For all these reasons, it's just there for them. It doesn't have any basis. It doesn't have any other purpose, and so you don't. So you do whatever you want for your immediate benefit, and you don't worry much about anything else. So Prabhupada says the materialists who have no concept of God think that they are advancing, but according to Bhagavad Gita, they are unintelligent and devoid of all sense. And he says they try to enjoy this material world to the utmost limit, and therefore always engage in inventing something for sense gratification. Such materialistic inventions are considered to be advancement of human civilization, but the result is that people grow more and more violent and more cruel to animals and cruel to other human beings. Because we know that even the more you fan the flames of kama, desire, the higher they burn. And then you're in competition with one another, right? And you're angry because you're not being satisfied. You think you want to be satisfied, but you're still not satisfied. So it causes cruelty. It's interesting how Prabhupada. analyzes that. He says, indirectly, this verse anticipates the invention of nuclear weapons, of which the whole world is today very proud. At any moment, war may take place, and these atomic weapons may create havoc. Prabhupada was writing this during the height of the Cold War, where this was really still there, but it was really seemingly more, something that could happen at any moment. And then 1610, taking shelter, ashritya, of insatiable lust, kamam dushpuram. The do is like a really strong negative intensifier. So really, really insatiable lust, and absorbed, because I think that's what it is. You that's the only pleasure you have, is to fulfill desires. You have these are all kinds of material desires. So all I can do is try to find. They feel that they have no happiness inside. You see, we know that happiness can come from inside, and then also from our connection with Krishna. But they think there's no other happiness. So it's just they somehow to fulfill that, get as much as they can, to work as hard as they can, to by hook or by crook to get ahead. So it's taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige. The demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. So they said, they'll do whatever they can, to get what they want. And of course, you if you're selfish, there's the word later on, we'll see that they're self-centered. So therefore, it's natural to have pride. It's natural to be arrogant. You're competing against others. You're important, right? You're the center of everything. If that's all there is to have material happiness. So here Prabhupada he translates asat grahan as non-permanent things, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur he says they engage in false doctrines, asat grahan. So they have a couple different translations here, but Prabhupada he seems to recognize the other one in his purport. Prabhupada wrote the Bhagavad Gita commentaries while consulting with other commentaries. So he doesn't. Sometimes he draws on them without, getting into technicalities like the meaning of the words here. As you'll see, here's what he says. First, he says, accepting non-permanent things. So this is the translation he gives. Such demoniac people create their own God, create their own hymns, and chant accordingly. The result is that they become more and more attracted to two things: sex enjoyment and accumulation of material wealth. And then he says, induced by pride and false prestige, they create some principles of religion which are not approved by the Vedic injunctions. So he seems to recognize this, they engage in false doctrines. Those two things are both in the verse. When you have two meanings to words, oftentimes that's what it means, that the verse contains both of these meanings. And otherwise, from Prabhupada's word-for-word translation, these things aren't clear. I thought just somehow he had some insight into it, that's what these people would do. But actually it comes right from the verse itself if you take Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's interpretation. So Prabhupada inserts that into the purport, that other meaning for asat grahan. He inserts that into the purport. He said, such demonic people are only attracted by wine, women, gambling, and meat eating. Those are their asuchi, unclean habits. So it means that they're willing to do any kind of sense pleasure, and they don't worry about whether it's very healthy or clean or whatever. So those are the two things they're doing here. It's sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent, or just by that lust. But that other meaning there of false doctrines seems to be really a part of it as well. Prabhupada includes it in the purport, even though he doesn't mention it. And then in 11 and 12, they believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. That's how he puts it. Until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds of thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. So they, by hook or by crook, because you think that's it. This is you only live once, and you have to have as much happiness as you can. And if you can get away with it, great. You don't have any problem. And see, Prabhupada says that he says chintam, which can be thoughts, and he makes some specifics as fears and anxieties. And think about it. When you think that your only happiness is external, and you realize, of course, that you're not really fully in control of circumstances. Things go wrong all the time. And things happen that are outside of your control. And that makes you worry. We worry enough even though we know that Krishna is in control. So imagine if we think that there's no Krishna. Imagine if we think that, and we think that maybe something will happen to us that's not very pleasant, but that isn't going to be the ruination of our lives. That can be a growing experience, this kind of thing. It's not necessary, but they think it's their whole life. To have their position, to have wealth and power and a good life. So if that's the only meaning to life, if you're a failure, if your business fails, or if you're king and you get thrown off the throne, whatever you might be, you lose whatever status you have, your life is ruined. People say that, right? My life is ruined. Well, that echoes this kind of mentality. My life is ruined. So there's always has to be anxiety, because they know that they think of themselves as being in control, but they know they can't control everything. They're competing with other people, and then, something happens and it's over, And so there's always anxieties and fears for them. The demoniac accept that the enjoyment of the senses is the ultimate goal of life, and this concept they maintain until death. Why would you ever stop, right? In the Varnashram system, right, you stop it, and you go engage in spiritual realization. You take Vanaprastha. Say they continue that way until death because there's nothing else. They do not believe in life after death, and they do not believe that one takes on different types of bodies according to one's karma or activities in the world, so therefore they don't feel that there's anything hanging over their heads. They can do whatever they want. As long as they don't get busted, they win. The thieves and the procrastinators win at the end of death, right? Yeah. The debtors, people who owe money, they win.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Those who hold the debts, they lose. But one who is demoniac has no knowledge of Vedic scripture, nor has he any faith. Again, we hear this. Therefore, he feels free to do anything for sense enjoyment, regardless of the consequences. Right? And then now we have 13 through 15 comes together. And this is, Prabhupada really translates this beautifully. I was looking at the word for word, and he really makes this beautiful, smooth translation that seems to express it lovely. He says, demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. And the word here is manaratam. It means the chariot of the mind. So schemes is a perfect translation of that. Whatever your mind is thinking, it's for planning things. Yeah? According to my schemes. Beautiful. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. It's the words there are Ishvaram, I think, and Ishvara and Bogi. I am the Lord of everything, the controller, and I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. Siddha, Balavan, Sukhi. I am the richest man, Adya, surrounded by aristocratic relatives, Abhijanavan. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. And of course, they say they make a show of this kind of stuff. Damba yagya. And then 16 says, thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, they become too strongly attached to the sense enjoyment and fall down to hell. And the word here is narake, narakaloka. So this means these are the planets at the bottom of the universe.
I see.
When the universal form is described, there are planets that go all the way down to the soles of the feet, and these are below that, just above the Garbhodaka ocean. And these are the places that where really heavy bad karma is removed. So it's like when you have a big debt of, because when you have to burn off that karma one way or the other. So when you have a huge amount of good karma, you go to the heavenly planets, And when you have a huge amount of that, you have to go to the hellish planets. The descriptions in the fifth canto are just will just make your hair stand on end. It's really it's not eternal. It's only in proportion to the amount of sinful activities that you've done. You've done that much harm to others, and now you suffer it, and then you come back again. But it's really, really not a place you want to ever have to go. And you really, it's really a sad tale for someone to go there. So they have the various numerous chitta anxieties. They're perplexed by illusions. This is jala samavrita, surrounded by a network. And Prabhupada explains it nicely. The network here is not exactly like a wireless network, but it means like a net, actually. He says the result is that without their knowledge, they are gliding toward hell. Here the Sanskrit word moha jala is very significant. Jala means net, like fish caught in a net. So it's a real net. and they have no way to come out. So when Prabhupada translates network, it means a net in a more traditional sense, rather than a networking, social networking or wireless network or anything like that. It means a net. A net, yeah. A regular kind of net that captures you and pulls you down, like a fish in a net, he says. He takes that from Baladeva Jabushan also. And then says, he is given an opportunity to accumulate such things, but he has no conception of past causes. He simply thinks that all his massive wealth is due to his own endeavor. A demoniac person believes in the strength of his personal work and not in the law of karma. So when somebody is in a powerful position and is able to acquire wealth, many times it's because they've done something pious in the past. They think, no, it's just all me, I'm superior. And if he doesn't realize that he's been aided by his past karma, he doesn't realize he's going to be injured by his present bad karma. So it works against him both ways. He takes all the credit for the things he gets, and he thinks that he's not going to pay for the bad things he does. There are many demoniac people, and each is enemy to the others. This is an interesting analysis by Prabhupada. This enmity becomes more and more deep between persons, then between families, then between societies, and at last between nations. Therefore, there is constant strife, war, and enmity all over the world. Again, that competition. He says anybody who's in competition with him, they take as an enemy. And so it says the more of these kind of people there are, the more there's fighting, the more everybody hates each other. It says enmity all over the world. So it's a very, the word mother goodness, you have this feeling of inner happiness that makes you have empathy for others. Here, when you're deeply caught in desire, and you think you need it, you'll die if you don't have this kind of happiness. You're so selfish. There's a word coming up here this next verse. Atma Sambhavita. Prabhupada calls it self-complacent. Baladev and Vishwanath give it a little different one, and the most literal translation is like self-centered. So I think the self-complacent, I think that's Prabhupada really means kind of self-centered. Yeah. You're happy with yourself, but you're the center of everything. So when you're really self-centered like that, you don't have empathy for others. And so if they're suffering, oh well, too bad. They're the losers. I got everything. If they were better people, they could have some too. But they're useless people, so we don't need them anymore. Get rid of them, I mean, in our modern society, as we become more and more automated,
Yeah.
already, I mean, this is what the super rich and powerful are thinking, We don't need so many poor people anymore. We used to need them for the factories. We used to need them for stuff, So why should we worry about, providing them with, with anything, Social Security or health care or anything, good wages? We don't need them. Let them go away. We don't need them anymore. We have automated factories. We just need a few of them to do some service jobs. We just need a few of them to do stuff. What do we need these people for? What good are they? Right? That's what they think. What good are they? So we're gonna see a lot of that. That's how it used to be, when the Industrial Revolution first started, you just work them to death, And now it's gonna. Then we needed them for a while. We needed people to work in the factories. You needed workers. Now we need fewer of them. We could cut the population of these workers and poor people by a whole lot, probably 75%. We'll all be happier for that. So self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige. They sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only, yajna dambena, without, out of pride, prideful sacrifices, without following any rules or regulations. So, in here, what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says is, Prabhupada calls him self-complacent. Oops, I went too far. Self-complacent, and I think the literal translation I saw from our Garuda Prabhu says self-centered. I think that's kind of what Prabhupada's aiming at there. But he says Atma Sambhavita means those who have attained worshipable status, but are not respected by any well-bred people. And Prabhupada kind of also brings that out in his purport. So it's interesting. You can see Prabhupada says, sometimes such demons take up the role of preacher, mislead the people, and become known as religious reformers or as incarnations of God. His common men advertise them as God and worship them, and by the foolish they are considered advanced in the principles of religion or in the principles of spiritual knowledge. See, so only foolish people accept them. So this is why here Vishnu says Sambhavita means those who have attained worshipable status but are not respected by any well-bred people, only by the foolish. The word avidipurvakam means a disregard for the rules and regulations, especially stressed here. These things are always due to ignorance and illusion. So again, I think Prabhupada's translation here was more literal, and it seems that Vishwanath was a little bit more purportful, but Prabhupada incorporates that into his purport. There's a legitimacy there. So he says that these people, they will sometimes try to be religious leaders of some kind, and will bluff people, but on the foolish people will believe them. We see it happening. And then 18 is bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger. The demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies, in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. Right? There's nothing worse for a person who wants to be the center of everything and be the most powerful than to have somebody be more powerful, and what to speak of all powerful. That just is a terrible come down. Right? If there's a God, and especially if he's all powerful, that automatically means that we're insignificant. There's one impersonalist fellow. I thought it was one person, but apparently not. I can't. But that was his calculation. Was that if there's an all-powerful God, then my existence would be completely insignificant, and therefore he thought that that God has to just be the source of everything. There can't be an actual personal God. And maybe there's some force that creates everything, but if there's one being that's so superior to everybody else, and everybody else, including themselves, are completely insignificant. Now, that's objectively true, but the fact is that Krishna loves us. And so that's where our value comes from.
Right.
So we Krishna doesn't love us because we're special. He could make 1 billion of us more if he wanted. And so he doesn't need us. So we shouldn't be prideful because of Krishna, that Krishna loves us. But instead we should. But our value, our self-esteem comes from the fact that even though we don't deserve it, that Krishna does, and he does always. So that's how we get around that. But for those who can't get to that point, the notion of having somebody superior and completely superior is just it's a complete come down for them. Their pride just goes nowhere, and they feel like they're useless. So that's why it says they blaspheme against real religion. They'll say things like it's you're weak, and therefore you follow this religion, hoping that this fictional powerful person is going to protect you and save you. You're dreaming of this pie in the sky life. There's no world. Think they call it the otherworldly religion. This is Karl Marx said that religion was the opium of the people. He said maybe it was okay for them that they helped them, but he said it was not real. They were dreaming of heaven, or dreaming of Goloka, but there's no such place. So it's just a psychological comfort, So he says, just like taking drugs or something, it doesn't do it. They'll tell you things like that, Nothing. Why do you do that, And and then you're subordinating yourself and bowing down and offering worship. This is humiliating. This is, why do you do that? Just if you were weak, if you were strong, it's only because for weak people who do that. If you were strong, you could make a life for yourself. You could protect yourself. You wouldn't have to bow down and do all this and humiliate yourself. You can stand up straight, look anybody in the eye. None of this pranam stuff. That's how they think. And so it says that the Lord, it says that He is situated in their bodies and in the bodies of others. So we see that. Like if we understand that, this is what gives gives us happiness and value. That Krishna is there with us. That's how much He's concerned for us. And when we see that in other people, that we understand how valuable they are. So we don't feel empty inside, and we feel respect and love for others because of the presence of Krishna. That's not there in the demonic. They don't think there's such a person present. So it says, a demonic person, Prabhupada says, being always against God's supremacy, does not like to believe in the scriptures. He is envious of both the scriptures and the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is caused by his so-called prestige and his accumulation of wealth and strength. He wants to think he's somebody. Not knowing this, he is actually envious of his own self as well as of others. He commits violence on other bodies and on his own. Right? Because the things he's doing are going to cause him to have a terrible future. And he thinks that the other people don't have any value besides what he can get out of them. Where we find value for ourselves and value for others by the presence of Krishna. So moving along to 19. Those who are envious and mischievous, Dvishata Kruran. Another name, that Kruran means cruel. Like we have Akrura, who took Krishna from Vrindavan to Mathura.
Yeah, cool.
His name literally means not cruel. And not cruel. Akrura. Yeah. See, so Kruran means cruel.
I see.
Instead of because just like in English, the a makes it negative, not cruel, not cruel. See, right? And so the Kruran means cruel, literally. And Dvishata Prabhupada, when Prabhupada uses the word envious, it doesn't mean like usually we have a notion of jealousy, but it means that somebody who wishes you ill, who's hateful. So it's like kind of hateful and cruel. Is kind of so it's kind of heavier than even Prabhupada translates it there. If the real literal translations, those who are envious and mischievous, or hateful and cruel, who are the lowest among men, Nara Adhaman, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence. This is Ajasram, forever, again and again. into the wombs of the inauspicious Ashubhan. Shubha is good fortune. Ashubhan, Ashurishu, into the wombs of the demoniac and inauspicious. So it says, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence into various demonic species of life. So again and again they go back into they get these birth with lower qualities. As, again and again and again, he says. Prabhupada says forever. It means again and again, and in the wombs, yonishu, into the wombs of these asurishu, and it's ashubhan, very inauspicious. And Prabhupada says, in this verse, it is clearly indicated that the placing of a particular individual soul in a particular body is the prerogative of the supreme will. The demoniac person may not agree to accept the supremacy of the Lord, and it is a fact that he may act according to his own whims, but his next birth will depend upon the decision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not of himself, on himself. So Prabhupada shows pretty clearly the misconceptions that they have. And then now 20, we're coming down the home stretch here. Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demonic life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. He says, aprapya, without achieving me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence, adamam, that means lowest gatim, destination. So janmani jami, birth after birth, they don't achieve me, because they have that demonic mentality, and so they keep going down, down, down to the lowest part, the adamam gatim. So they never. So in that way, it says they never approach him. They continuously don't achieve him. Birth after birth, they turn away, and they keep going down further and further and further. And Prabhupada says, it is clearly stated that such demons have practically no chance of receiving the mercy of God at any stage of later life. In the Vedas also it is stated that such persons gradually sink to become dogs and hogs. It may be then argued in this connection that God should not be advertised as all-merciful if he is not merciful to such demons. And then he says, in answer to this question, in the Vedanta Sutra, we find that the Supreme Lord has no hatred for anyone. The placing of the asuras, the demons, in the lowest status of life is simply another feature of his mercy. Prabhupada explains this some other places where he says that this is what we want. We want our freedom. We want to do what we want to do. And so Krishna is equal to everyone. If we want to be able to do what we want to do and accept the consequences, he gives us that ability. He doesn't force us to surrender to him or to serve him. He allows us that freedom of choices. That's his mercy. And then, but he says, sometimes the asuras are killed by the Supreme Lord, but this killing is also good for them, for in Vedic literature we find that anyone who is killed by the Supreme Lord becomes liberated. So some of them get it that way. There's a third option, a second option, it isn't mentioned here, but and I wish I could find the exact source, but it's in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, in one of Prabhupada's purports. And he doesn't explicitly state this verse, but he describes it enough that it's clear that's what he's talking about. And he says, and his solution is that the devotees of the Lord, so the Lord will chase after these people.
I see.
And they can by the mercy of the devotees they can get Krishna consciousness.
I see.
So that's the other loophole. So Krishna can kill them directly, and that's not so many of them that do that. And Vishwanath Thakur says, and it's understood that the ones that don't get killed, they're still in out of luck. But that's the other one, and especially in Lord Chaitanya's time, the devotees are chasing after everybody. Just like Nityananda was chasing after Jagai and Madhai, right. Like that. So the chance is the Lord's devotees. Who Prabhupada says another place in the Bhagavad Gita that they are they're transcendently more merciful than the Lord because they understand the desire of the Lord.
Right.
The Lord wants them all to come back. So it's like there's another loophole there for them. that isn't mentioned here. Okay. Then 21. There are 3 gates leading to hell. This is an important verse. This lust, anger, and greed. Kama, krodha, lobha. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So if you want a nice summary, right? First we had the following the Vedic instructions or not following the Vedic instructions. But if you want, as far as their character goes, this is kind of, these are 3 things are there that really dominate the personality of the asuras, and so it sums it up very nicely. 3 things. So there's many different things. There's attitudes underlying these things, kama, krodha, and lobha. So if these things are running very hot and very strong, they're kind of the main features of the asuric nature. So it's very important. And I have the purport 2 places there, and also here. The beginning of demonic life is described herein. One tries to satisfy his lust, and when he cannot, anger and greed arise. See, they're related to each other. A sane man who does not want to glide down to the species of demonic life must try to give up these 3 enemies, which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement. We heard about that, already, how in the mode of goodness there's that internal happiness that comes out. The happiness of the soul begins to shine, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, and that allows you to be peaceful and satisfied. But without that, then you're desperately trying to get something from the outside to fill that void that you feel. And it says it turns at first it's the kama, then it's the krodha because you're angry because you can't get it, and then there's greed that you still want to get it. So these 3 things are kind of the ruling qualities of the asuric mentality, and lead you down that. Here Prabhupada says, he says this is kind of the beginning of demonic life. So these things lead you down the garden path, as they say, towards the demoniac quality. So that they produce it, and they're really they remain core parts of it. I guess you'd say that's the seed of demonic mentality in life. In 1622, the man who has escaped these 3 gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. So they have a chance to move upwards. And Prabhupada says, one should be very careful of these 3 enemies to human life, lust, anger, and greed. The more a person is freed from lust, anger, and greed, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow the rules and regulations enjoined in the Vedic literature. By following the regular principles of human life, one gradually raises himself to the platform of spiritual realization. If one is so fortunate by such practice to rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, then success is guaranteed for him. This is going to kind of come across again, this at the very end, so we won't say much here. But there's an understanding here. Here's the perspective here is that by following the Vedic rules and regulations, one can eventually come to Krishna consciousness. Also, by understanding the knowledge of this chapter, it leads us to bhakti. So all these other chapters, we had these twofold things. The chapters themselves can lead you to Krishna consciousness, but if you're already in Krishna consciousness, they can help you in your Krishna consciousness. We'll discuss that at the very end, how that happens. Because usually we can't follow this other path. The Vedic path is not really available to us, and there's no Varnashram system. It's not really open to us. 23, so there's only 23 and 24 left. He who discards spiritual injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. And the purport says, so again we can come to the importance of following Shastra or not. As described before, the Shastra Vidhi, or the direction of the Shastra, is given to the different castes and orders of human society. We talked about in the first 3 verses, things that they focus on. Everyone is expected to follow these rules and regulations. He says the word kama, karataha, is very significant. A person who knowingly violates the rules acts in lust. He knows that this is forbidden, but still he acts. This is called acting whimsically. So it's a little bit different from when we say whimsically means people just kind of just do what they feel like, you know. Mm-hmm. Here this says that they're almost forced to do it by the power of their lust or their desire. So it overrules their. Well, we've all at some time said that I knew I shouldn't do that. I knew better than that, but I did it anyway.
Yes.
So it's not whimsically like we usually take it, just like lightly. But we knew we shouldn't do it. We knew it was going to be bad, and we did it anyway, and it was bad. And we thought, oh, I knew better than to do that. So we've all had that experience afterwards. Oh. And so then he says, but even if he follows the rules and regulations, here this is interesting. Even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles and ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then all his knowledge becomes spoiled. Okay? And even if he accepts the existence of God, if he does not engage himself in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled. Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. So again, we found the same thing that when we talked about the yoga ladder and such things. So the different steps of the varnashram system are meant to lead you to Krishna consciousness, which will allow you to get out. We don't encounter it so much in this chapter. Bhakti isn't spoken of so much, but in the 15. In 14 and 13, we heard about it. Yeah. And so that was the actual way that we got out of the material. You know, in 14, it said that's how you get free from the modes of material nature. That you know the continuous one-pointed bhakti, avibhacharena bhakti. So it's been mentioned in many of these chapters already that's the real thing that gets you out. And so the knowledge is supposed to lead you to bhakti, or here the practice of the rules of the varnashram system are supposed to lead you there. And if it doesn't lead you there, then it's not going to be successful. It's bhakti that's the real ingredient that gets you out.
Yes.
Okay. Not otherwise, he says. So that's important. And then in 1624, this is the end. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should so act that he may gradually be elevated. So it's a nice conclusion. Krishna just says, okay, that's what you got to do. Those, if you do that for whatever station you're in, those are daivi, those are divine or transcendental, and they lead you towards the path of liberation. That's your start from wherever you're at. And if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. And it says here, chastram pramanam, you're using, Prabhupada says, by the regulations of the scriptures. Pramana means evidence, he says in the word for word in other places. So how you define your duty? By the evidence of the scriptures. And then I quoted most of the purport here. No, actually I quoted the first part of it. The first paragraph was really beautiful. He says, as stated in the 15th chapter, all the rules and regulations of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. Because before, when you said that it's supposed to all lead you to Krishna consciousness, right? So then the question is then, okay, well, what if we're already devotees? Okay? So here Prabhupada says, as stated in the 15th chapter, all the rules and regulations of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. If one understands Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita and becomes situated in Krishna consciousness, engaging himself in devotional service, he has reached the highest perfection of knowledge offered by the Vedic literatures. So we're following the Vedas by being Krishna conscious. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made this process very easy. He asks people simply to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and to engage in the devotional service of the Lord and eat the remnants of foodstuff offered to the deity. One who is directly engaged in all these devotional activities is to be understood as having studied all Vedic literature. He has come to the conclusion perfectly. He says, of course, for the ordinary persons who are not in Krishna consciousness, who are not engaged in devotional service, what is to be done and what is not to be done must be decided by the injunctions of the Vedas. So now he's saying we're already established. So now the question remains: so what's the use of the chapter? We're doing what Krishna says by being in bhakti. So why do we have to analyze the divine and demoniac natures. And so I'm going to give you an answer to that. This is the last slide we're going to have. Thought about that. So this is my writing here on the last slide. As devotees of Krishna, we are already on the right path. That's Prabhupada said nicely. But the information can help us to make progress on the path. Okay? Because what happens is we still have these contaminations in us, aspects of the asuric mentality. They may still be present and keeping us from making progress in our bhakti. I mean, and so particularly, of course, lust, anger, and greed are there, and those are the ones that lead us in that direction, and really are central features of the asuric mentality that brings us down. And so, what we can do, and what we should do, because when we've talked about this before, how bhakti through itself, because it's connecting ourselves with ourselves as a soul. And the soul has all good qualities. So by practicing bhakti, chanting Hare Krishna, doing what Prabhupada said, taking the remnants of the deity's food stuff and these kind of things, begin to remove negativities from us. It has that power. Okay? And so it can kind of happen kind of magically. But part of bhakti is that some things are very strong. Like this lust, anger, and greed are very strong. They don't just disappear oftentimes that easily. We have some things that are more difficult to remove. Yeah. And many things that don't just disappear quite so easily. So part of bhakti is to do things like study Bhagavad Gita, which is part of bhakti, to gain the knowledge that we have in this chapter and be able to recognize the things in us that are harmful and the things in us that are positive. And so still underlying this is this power of bhakti that's going to help us to overcome them. But many times we have to recognize them first. I have this tendency, I have this tendency, I have this tendency. Yeah. And these are not helpful for me. So this chapter can help us to recognize that. There's underlying things here. I may not have as much faith in God as I should have. I may be thinking, I may not be as aware of the future karma as I need. I may be thinking that I have to be somebody. I may not be thinking how I'm fortunate to be connected with Krishna and how wonderful Krishna is and how that should make me satisfied. So maybe other things that are hiding underneath in our psychology that we're not so fully aware of. So what do we do about it then when we know them? Is we can apply the bhakti process. And I can see that there's three things we can do for corrective action. There's prayer. Right? We pray for the strength to overcome them. Krishna, I have this weakness. Please help me with that. Who was saying? Somebody was saying. I was just hearing a lecture. I can't remember where it was. There was somebody who I think there was somebody who was talking to His Holiness Bhakti Charoswami. That they had this real. They didn't have faith in Krishna. They somehow couldn't have faith, and they were saying, "What can I do?" And he told them to go in front of Krishna Balaram, because they were in Vrindavan, and you pray until they reveal themselves somehow. And he didn't know what else to tell him. And after like a couple of hours, he said it worked. The guy came back and said it worked. He somehow had his faith was increased. So we can pray. Right. That I have these things. I don't know how to get rid of them. And we can be inspired by devotees. This is if you meditate on people, you meditate on qualities that people have, you'll attain those qualities. So it means both good and bad. So if we're fault finders, we will acquire the faults of others. If we recognize persons who have the qualities that we're lacking, then we can appreciate them and think about them, and that can inspire us to acquire those. So that's the second way we can get over that. And the third thing we can do is we're given a lot of understanding here, a lot of intelligence here, so we can look at ourselves and see what underlies these things. If I have kama, why do I have kama? Right? Because I'm not appreciating myself as a soul who has. I'm not appreciating my good fortune enough that Krishna loves me. I'm not understanding where real happiness comes from. And so we can kind of look for the root misconceptions, I'm calling them here, that underlie the negative qualities, and try to reinforce the positive conceptions. So through these ways, these are devotional ways. It's not doing something separate. But this is part of bhakti. And so when it says bhakti removes all negativities, sometimes it's this way, not just by the magic way, where they kind of melt away powerlessly. So this is what we can do. So these chapters, the knowledge given in these chapters are really useful to those of us who are already practicing bhakti, by understanding how the three modes of nature work, by understanding ourselves, what is us and what's not us, like in chapter 13. What's the field, what's not us, and what's us, the knower of the field. Being able to separate those two things is very important. In chapter 14, the understanding of the modes, the qualities that are keeping us there, because it says those qualities in the 13, it says we're separate, but the qualities are keeping us there, our attraction to them, our desire to be associated with them. So when we understand how those things work, that helps us to get rid of it. To understand the power of detachment and things in chapter 15, it helps us. And then here, by understanding because we have some of these mentality, the wrong mentality in us. And so how we can develop the right mentality to be progressive and to root out these things that are holding us back. So we can use the knowledge and information that's given, that's called jnana. Usually it says these chapters are dominated by jnana, although Prabhupada and Baladev said that it's all things. It's got bhakti, it's got karma, and it's got jnana in them. But many commentators say it's predominated by jnana, these last 6 chapters. But it's a jnana that can be used devotionally and help us so much.